Greetings, citizens! My name is FailureToReport, and let me welcome you fine SOBs to the final video discussing Star Citizen 3.5 and maybe a tad bit of talk about the coming 3.6 milestone patch. This year has been a real cluster of... It's been very turbulent, and as a result, where I would normally put out just 2 videos covering a milestone patch, the PTU initial build thoughts, and then the live release build review, that format doesn't really work for 3.5. I know some fanboys on Spectrum are probably saying something like, but that isn't the reason I've been more active this cycle. In fact, I make almost no money off of this channel. So to the rumors that I'm milking the CIG tit to pay my rent, buy my Porsche, or that this channel is some mad crazy revenue stream, you're an idiot. If you don't like the channel because we say mean things about the dream, that's fine. Feel free to say that all day long. The reason I've had to be so active with Star Citizen content and on Spectrum the last month is because CIG has been all over the place with 3.5. Now, for those backers who aren't active or you're on the sidelines and haven't bought in yet, let me put out some context here. After Cloud Imperium drastically delayed the release of Star Citizen 3.0 for more than a year, one of the promises from Chris Roberts was that they would instead switch to a new update system where they would do quarterly updates instead of massive year-long work dumps. In theory, this new system should have kept the game feeling more maintained and given backers more content. In theory. The problems, however, started mounting pretty quickly. CIG would lay out a roadmap for the year which included their 4 quarterly updates. I refer to them on this channel as milestone patches. As the deadlines would approach for these updates, CIG would cut content out of the patches and move them to another patch down the road, sometimes the next quarter, sometimes nearly a year later. So when the quarterly update system first started out, it wasn't apparent to a lot of backers that this system was going to be an issue. We were getting new patches, there was some new content here and there, and things seemed to be in a much better state than they were the years before 2018. However, as the months rolled on, a trend was starting to develop. You see, these new milestone patches usually contained a few game fixes, some quality of life stuff, some backend for the server, and then there were major pillars like new ships, new gameplay mechanics, new game locations and planets. And after a few updates into CIG's new patch structure, it became apparent that the pillar features were getting shuffled around the roadmap to buy time. Usually communicated last minute to the backers who had been foaming at the mouth for the latest game edition. Now, to be fair to Cloud Imperium, I understand that game development isn't a straight road you just walk down. However, the problem with the new system was the snowball effect that they were creating. As more things were pushed to the right on the roadmap, it meant more things for CIG to finish in the next milestone patch. So it quickly became clear that the solution to this was for CIG to rush the content that they had delayed into the next patch, and then push something from that patch into the following patch still further down the line. As a result, 2019 started off with Star Citizen 3.5, which contained many features that were supposed to have been 3.4, but because it couldn't be finished in time, that became 3.4 Lite. Yet, as the snowball started gaining momentum, what we got was Star Citizen 3.5 Lite as well. The new Banu ship was pushed back from 3.5 to 3.6, which was then later pushed back to 3.7. The P-52 Merlin snub fighter improvements were pushed to 3.6. The Constellation Taurus was pushed all the way back to 3.9 a year after it was supposed to have been live. Salvage was bumped out of 3.5 to 3.7, and the 300 series rework ended up only being the 300i rework at 3.5 live launch. Even then, these are just the major features that were supposed to be in 3.5, which doesn't factor in all of the smaller supporting updates to the client, servers, AI, UI, and so on. And I'm also not getting into the stuff that getting bumped from 3.5 bumped other things from 3.6 and further on down the line. Are you getting the picture yet? The snowball is real. So, when someone asks why Failure had to cover Star Citizen so much this patch, it's because there were things missing at the release of 3.5, as well as some major game overhauls, which broke things, changed things, and so forth. If you were to go back and watch my initial 3.5 live video, almost none of it applies because the state of 3.5 now, as it sits going into 3.6, is completely different than when I recorded that video. Well then, I think that was the longest intro to a video I've ever had to do. But background and context is important, and that crap needed to be in this video. So then, let's talk about Star Citizen 3.5 as Cloud Imperium gears up to get 3.6 into the hands of the Evocati for NDA testing. Star Citizen's 3.5 update was meant to be a major one. It carried the weight of the flight model rework, which was originally supposed to have been a part of 3.4, but wasn't finished in time for the Christmas holiday patch. It also introduced gimbal assisted weapons, ArcCorp as well as her moons, AI bounty hunting missions, heat mechanics for ship functions, ship AI improvements, a handful of new ship variants, and the 300 series rework. It sounds amazing when I'm saying it right now, but what we have in game as of this recording is anything but. Star Citizen 3.5 is probably one of the worst milestone patches I have ever seen in the nearly 7 years that I have been following this project. So here's a little bit on why, in no particular order. The flight model rework. This is going to be partly met with some criticism depending on each viewer, because some people love the new flight model, just like some people think it's fine to marry and bang your cousin. You can think that, but it's still wrong. One of the biggest criticisms that some players had about the flight model prior to 3.5 was that it always fed into circle strafing combat. This is where two ships point their business ends at each other and pummel away. At least, that's how it goes if you don't know what you're doing. A lot of people seem to think that there was no way to change that engagement. Instead, they wanted World War II planes in space with grand envisions of performing airplane dogfighting doctrine to get in behind their enemy and really let them have it. What we got in 3.5, thanks to these people, is just a steaming pile of crap. To all the influencers who were whispering into CIG's feedback ear on how the flight model should be, I hate you. You're a terrible person. You've bastardized one of the most enjoyable space games out there. Be really proud of yourselves. Elite Dangerous is going to clean house when they introduce Space Legs, FPS combat, and base building next year, thanks to the idiots telling CIG these changes made gameplay better. In Star Citizen 3.5, ship combat is now a joke, thanks to the way ships handle, the heat mechanics, which we'll get into a little bit later, and the way ship speeds are now implemented. Instead of being able to engage an enemy as it was in prior builds, you now both slide around each other like morons because the ship's drift, speeds, and the absolute crap performance of weapons. We'll touch on weapons later as well. Star Citizen went from throwing vibes of Battlestar Galactica dogfighting to trying to punch another person on an ice rink while you're both wearing rubber boots covered with a layer of ice on the soles. And then, when you both focused really hard on consensually wobbling your way together, you find out you have to swing away at each other with pool noodles, hoping to do some kind of damage before you drift apart again. Ah yes, this brings back memories of Star Wars. Totally. I remember when Luke struggles to vaporize that TIE fighter for 15 minutes until the TIE pilot gets bored and jumps away. Good times. A big part of why this new flight model is so bad also falls on one of the other new mechanics in 3.5, component heat. Prior to 3.5, heat mechanics were essentially just that your weapons overheated if you sustained fire for too long, and your quantum drive had a cooldown after it finished a jump. In Star Citizen 3.5, the fun is dialed down to 0, and heat now influences just about everything you do in your ship. As a result, thrusters overheat incredibly quickly while trying to make any kind of maneuver in combat. Even if you keep your speed limiter under the safety line, you simply can't do much of anything besides flying in a line without making your ship thrusters cook themselves. This means counter-turning is trash, giving chase to someone who boom and zooms is trash, braking is trash. If you need to use your thrusters to do it, it's trash. But wait, there's more! This heat mechanic encompasses everything in your ship now, including your quantum drive. You see, after a few months of getting tons of negative feedback on travel times from Port Olisar to Hurston, Cloud Imperium's gameplay wizards thought, how can we make travel in our game more cancerous? And so they gathered up the Imperial forces of Roberts and sat around the gold-inlaid RSI table until someone said, what if we make them drop out of quantum randomly, because their drive is overheating? To which somebody said, but don't we already regulate their travel with drive sizes dictating speed and fuel tanks regulating distance? What would that mechanic add to gameplay? This person was promptly excused from the room and probably executed, and plans to randomly jerk players from quantum travel just cause were put into the game. The end. In all seriousness, the new heat mechanics are just terribly implemented. I'm not opposed to adding heat mechanics into the game. Elite Dangerous has them and they work fine. If you're really pushing your ship systems or the weapons beyond their intent, you build up heat and either fry something or you pull back before you start doing damage. The reason this system works so well in Elite Dangerous is a two-parter. Part 1. You will never notice overheating in Elite unless you're doing something really stupid, like flying into a sun or running a really absurd weapon build while also engine boosting non-stop. Part 2. Elite Dangerous ships have the ability to dump this heat with heat sinks. So you can fly face first into that star or go all out with your all railgun setup to try to finish off that baddie before his shields regen, as long as you have a heat sink available to purge the inferno that you've created inside of your ship. Now, I'm not advocating that CIG needs to add yet another mechanic to ships in Star Citizen with heat sinks, but dialing back the heat ramping would make the flight a lot more varied and much less miserable. Alternatively, they could also just keep thruster heat as it is, but make thruster bursts more powerful so that you can actually stop drifts and counter maneuver in a dogfight. As for quantum travel, heat needs to go. It adds nothing to the gameplay other than being an AFK deadman switch. Thought you had 15 minutes to kill by doing something in your house or getting out of the cockpit seat to do something inside of your ship? Sorry, quantum drop. Better go fix it, numbnuts. One of the other major blights on Star Citizen 3.5 is weapons. When 3.5 went live, many of us spent a lot of time defending CIG for putting gimbal assisted mode in. A new aiming option added to the previous options of just gimbaled and fixed. With this new mode, players who ran weapons mounted on a gimbal could toggle an assist aiming feature on their gimbals, which created a circular cone on their ship's HUD. Any target that is kept in this cone can be fired on by these weapons, instead of the traditional gimbal mode where a player has to manually aim their weapons at the targets on the screen. This new aiming mode was sorely needed in Star Citizen, because many pilots struggle with combat and being able to accurately engage an enemy. While I'm not a fan of fluffing Care Bears, I do try my best with this channel to sympathize with people outside of my own bias. I know there are many players who don't want to do combat at all, but will have it forced on them. I know there are many players who don't have or won't throw money at CIG to fly the top-end fighters. So when all the rage erupted over gimbal-assisted aiming, I tried to imagine the perspective of Joe Backer, who has trouble keeping his ship pointed at the enemy, much less being able to hit him. I was fine with this system because it didn't really add any major advantages to players who were good at combat. Shots are still more accurate if you are manually aiming, and your DPS will still be better running fixed. Or would it? To my absolute horror, after spending so much time sticking up for CIG's new aiming method, I discovered that with 3.5, fixed weapons were completely and utterly fucked. With 3.5, CIG had introduced more than just a new aiming mode. They added convergence to weapons, which in theory is a nice change for ships like the Vanguard, who have two totally different weapon systems that will never have the same point of aim unless your target is sitting still and you're sitting on top of them. In theory, this system would auto-correct for one type of weapon to converge with the other weapon's projectile path, so that all of your systems are hitting in the same spot. The problem with this new system is that it doesn't work for fixed weapons. Instead, they start firing like they're on gimbal mounts that are aiming in different directions. You can try to engage a target directly in front of you, and your weapons instead shoot in front of the target, behind the target, at the target's girlfriend who is sitting on her balcony on Terra. Basically anywhere but where you are aiming. You know what makes this even worse? Those same idiots who are fluffing CIG for the flight model changes are the same idiots who are telling CIG how to tune ESP. Nothing says, stop playing and wait for the next patch, like when the game is trying to control my ship for me to help me aim at my target better, but instead is actively fighting my inputs because it thinks it knows what I want to do. What's that? Just turn off ESP? Great idea. Oh, wait. By turning off ESP, the game then does the exact opposite and actually accelerates your point of aim off of a target, inducing a sense of snap-high sensitivity when you try to aim at your target. I actually have to manually dumb down my DPI with a trigger button so when I want to start shooting at something, or else the game pushes me off the target that I'm aiming at. That's quality. So again, to those special backers, you know who you are, you should shut up. Stop trying to tell CIG how to do combat, because you're born under power lines, window licking, paint chip eating morons. Again, I'm not talking about all backers, I'm not talking about Spectrum Warriors, I'm not even talking about fanboys. This is very specifically aimed at a select group of retards, and they know who they are. So, combat in 3.5 is utter trash. How about trading and hauling? Trash too. With 3.5.1, CIG introduced some new economy mechanics that, again, in theory make a lot of sense. Locations now have supply, which means they run out of goods and can't sell more. That's fine and makes total sense. What they didn't fix? Resupplying those locations, buying commodities. If you were to take a caterpillar out to an outpost, fill it up on, say, medical supplies, and then fly this fully loaded ship back to a major hub like Olisar, Lorville, ArcCorp, wherever, you would spend more time clicking the sell button than you did spawning your ship, plotting your course, flying all the way down to the planet, filling up the ship, and flying back to the location to sell. Why? Because there's still no dynamic economy. Locations will buy X amount of Y for fixed price until that demand is depleted, and then they don't want none no more until CIG's arbitrary timer lapses and they will buy X amount for Y again. Now, with everything in this game still being Tier 0, First Pass, pre-alpha state, that system would be fine. Except the biggest problem is that our one Caterpillar driver can literally tank that location's demand without even selling off 10% of his cargo hold. The demand numbers for these locations are so insanely low set that if you just sneezed a little SEO at a sell kiosk, the market acts like the whole city is now trying to find room to stack crates up and down every hallway and corridor because they are just flooded with whatever you're trying to sell. CIG, if you can't implement a true economy anytime soon, that's fine. The temporary X outpost will purchase Y amount of Z until number of minutes have passed system is totally fine for now. But the amount of goods these locations, especially places like ArcCorp, Lorville, and Levski will buy at a time is way too low. One player and a hauler should not utterly tank an economy. I can't even imagine what they envision Hull C pilots doing when they show up with a few thousand SEU. What, are they just going to be sitting there for 7 hours trying to sell their goods? Furthermore, if you're going to implement supply at outposts, you should also implement them being resupplied by players, and add fluctuating buy prices for critical shortages. And before someone gets all defensive with, "It's Tier 0 First Pass pre-alpha concept," yeah, that's fine. If you're going to implement shortages, you should also implement mechanics that go with them. This game suffers enough from having half a mechanic implemented, and for some reason, almost always the downside of that half implemented mechanic. We don't need any more of that in Star Citizen. Now, this also wouldn't be Star Citizen if we didn't talk about spaceships or pictures of spaceships. So let's do a bit of that. With Star Citizen 3.5, we saw the release of the Reliant variants, and they were promptly forgotten. The Sen Explorer variant does nothing because there's no exploration in the game. The Mako News Van is a ship that is so out of place, nobody even has a clue what its gameplay is going to be. The Tana variant, being the combat hull of the Reliant, is one of the few ships that should have made sense, except the Reliant is such a terrible combat ship that nobody would dare use it, even if it didn't lose O2 randomly and kill its pilot. But the important thing is that a few more ships are flyable in game now, so we can check those off on the next Star Citizen trailer. X number of ships flyable. We also saw the 300 series rework go live, with only the 300i on 3.5 live, and then the variants coming online with 3.5.1 as the testbed for the new ship customization tool. Now, while the rework was a nice boost for the 300 series, which gave them proper cargo bays, so that's cool, they remain a sort of out-of-place ship line in the grand scheme of things. The 325A, the fighter variant of the 300 series, is still woefully undergunned compared to heavier fighters, and pathetically sluggish and large compared to light fighters. While this performance shouldn't be an issue if the 300 series was still a starter ship line, it was CIG's intent to boost the 300s in order to give them room for the Origin 100 series as the starter ship line for Origin. So, while the 300s are now properly looking smooth as hell with the revamped Origin styling, their function is still woefully lacking in direction and purpose. Oh right, we also got the new ship customization system in 3.5.1, which allows owners of the 300 series to select custom interiors and paint jobs as well as some component packages. I'm not going to go super in depth with this because I already have 2 videos talking about it, but in essence, this system was really much better than I thought CIG was going to put out. Colors cost just a few dollars, interior options aren't too pricey, and the biggest concern I have going forwards is the component packages. While the options you can buy right now don't really make a huge difference because the 300 series is in kind of a lower end tier anyways, it does raise some concerns for how things will play out when this option is given to ships like the Super Hornet, Sabre, Vanguard, or God help us, capital ships. It was honestly shocking to me that so much of the outrage over this new system was focused on paying $2 for a paint job and barely a whisper on the component sales. One of the other major parts of 3.5 was AI improvements. This is important because there were 2 different roadmap items pertaining to the ship AI performance. Yet, when 3.5 went live, the AI were absolutely trash. They jittered, they janked, they wobbled, they did everything except for work. This turned Star Citizen's PU into a ghost town while backers waited for 3.5.1 to hopefully fix the problem. This is also important because when 3.5.1 went to the live servers, there were no fewer than 3 patch notes dedicated to fixing the AI improvements. Instead, they got even worse. This has been a major black eye on Star Citizen 3.5 because so much of the sparse content in Star Citizen revolves around the AI. Bounty missions, AI. Destroy the bad guy and recover a stolen item, AI. Patrol hearse in space, AI. Recover black box from wreck, guarded by AI. Clear out an enemy bunker, also AI. The only thing left to do in the PU for 3.5 was delivery missions and mining because the AI being broken is so far-reaching, and yet CIG didn't fix it. Don thy tinfoil hats, citizens! Let's talk about why CIG didn't fix such a major issue. Now, obviously there's some pretty ridiculous theories out there like, CIG can't fix AI cause they dumb. This seems unlikely to me given that AI was mostly functional prior to this build, and it seems suspect to me that so many basic functions in the game have also broken down all at once, which leads us to the next theory. Star Citizen servers are imploding. In a game where the creators are selling this vision of hundreds of players playing together in a living, breathing world, we haven't even been able to handle a population increase from 50 to a server in over a year. We don't have AI traffic going about their lives in the verse. In fact, AI are basically just dudes who walk around about a set group of waypoints inside stations, or AI that spawn at mission objectives, or AI that derp around in certain bunkers. I think the reason we haven't been seeing the game feel more like a living universe is because the game simply cannot handle it, and adding in ArcCorp and all the other features in 3.5 essentially broke the game. The other theory for why the AI are performing so terribly is based around the new beacon type. One of the other new additions to the game in 3.5 besides bounty target missions are the combat assistance request beacons. You can't miss them because they spam you non-stop. They're the ones that pay a 600 whole fucking credits for you to quantum out into the middle of nowhere, spend munitions and fuel trying to protect an NPC from pirates, only to get your measly, pathetic payout and then rethink your life choices. The reason I mention the combat assist beacons is because we had an issue last year where CIG implemented NPC interdictions. They were spawning all the time for players and overwhelming the server. With the amount of combat assist beacons up at any time, it would not shock me at all if a similar issue was occurring and as a result clogging up the server. Regardless of what the cause of the terrible AI though, the fact remains that it has been in an unbearable state for months now, with no word from CIG on the cause of it or if it will be fixed in 3.5 or 3.6. It's entirely possible that we could see the release at 3.6 with the same utterly useless broken AI. The real shame of the state of 3.5 is that these issues overshadow the good things accomplished during the patch, and believe it or not, there are some good things that came with 3.5. In my opinion, the most amazing change for 3.5 is the addition of the ship components and insurance claims. This means when you grind your way up to that new shield, power plant, quantum drive, or a shiny new set of meta guns, those items persist with your ship. If the server crashes and you wake up in your hab and you need to claim your ship, that ship will come back with all of the custom components that you had in it. If you get blown up flying face first into a planet, all of the components are still there. This is a huge step forwards for the gameplay of Star Citizen. I know countless people, myself included, who would never bother upgrading their ships because prior to 3.5, you could lose your ship at any moment thanks to server crashes, So now there's finally a reason to progress your ship. If only Cloud Imperium could get some kind of cross-server persistence so you could log back into cargo ships after a server crash and not lose all of your cargo, we'd finally have some level of game consistency. One of the other major additions to 3.5 was the introduction of NPC bounty target missions. These are amazing for the state of the game because they are fairly easy to get into even with an Aurora or a Mustang and can quickly turn into a steady revenue stream. This means backers who don't want to play the pay-to-win game and stuck with their starter ships have a reliable method to get into better ships through using earned credits in the PU to purchase ships in-game. This has been one of my biggest gripes on Star Citizen, being fair to players who aren't willing to spend money for a long time. Previously to 3.5, we did have in-game ship purchases, but they didn't really mean much if your only ship was an Aurora or a Mustang, because mission payouts were so terrible, the only people who were ever going to make enough to buy something were the Kool-Aid drinking fanatics who played Star Citizen for hours every day. With this change, the verse is made much more accessible to new backers and those who don't want to toss real money at Cloud Imperium. I hope we see other mission types getting this payout pass to bring them more in line with bounty target missions, as they are currently a lot of missions that pay less than the cost of your fuel and ammo you'd use doing them. The tragedy of Star Citizen 3.5 is that they are slowly getting more mechanics and loops in place to feel like the kind of game you'd actually get home and jump into for a few hours. But the stability of the patches, server, and gameplay is so unreliable, I still wouldn't recommend Star Citizen to somebody I didn't like. While I've tried to be a little less aggressive in criticizing Star Citizen this quarter because of the amount of major renovations that were happening in 3.5 and needing to see how things settled, the fact of the matter is the game has made so little progress because of things like cargo falling through ships, boxes teleporting across the galaxy, randomly dying while walking around, ship interiors killing people by breaking their legs randomly, fixed weapons shooting like the cross-eyed gunner from Spaceballs was manning them, just on and on. I'd love to start saying Star Citizen is good. I'm honestly pulling for CIG to deliver. But they just aren't there yet, and I'm not about to sell people on a dream that I still don't believe in. While Cloud Imperium are making progress on the game piece by piece, they're still struggling to prove that the grand vision is something that they can actually achieve. The world is empty of life, especially when Chris is selling the idea that it's going to be populated by 9 NPCs to every 1 player. They're supposed to have hundreds of players in one instance. We still have next to 0 persistence. We're floating about in the one unfinished solar system still. I could honestly go on and on like this for at least another 5 minutes. But the point I'm trying to drive at here is that even with additions like ArcCorp or ship rentals in 3.6, there's still just scraping the bottom of the barrel levels of content in this game. And I would feel like an absolute shill telling anybody that they should buy into the game at this stage. Again, I hope for the day that Cloud Imperium shuts me up and I have nothing left to really criticize. You see, despite popular belief that we're begging for the death of the game on this channel, most of us are just looking for a fun space game, and we're fine if that turns out to be Star Citizen or something else. But as of Star Citizen 3.5.1, at the time of this video, Star Citizen is an absolutely unplayable fucking nightmare. So, with that, Citizen, this has been your Failure to Report milestone patch review. I'm sorry that I was not able to give it all in just one encompassing video covering 3.5, but because of the way 3.5 was released and patched and broken and patched and broken, watching the original 3.5 live video does not even remotely reflect the state of Star Citizen 3.5.1 as of today. Now, hopefully, with 3.6, things will be a little more consistent across the patch, and we can do just one review video. But with things already being gutted and pushed out of 3.6 before it's even in Evocati hands, as well as CIG promising the 890 jump to be coming in patch 3.6.x, it's looking like it's going to be more of the same from 3.5, and that's really not a good thing. But with that, citizens, before signing off, for those of you salt mining bastards of the verse looking for a home, I've finally caved to all of you nagging to make a channel org. That's right, we're unionizing, citizen. You too can join FFS, the #1 org for people who just want to watch the verse burn. Enlist today to get first dibs on all our channel shenanigans and to have your barstool reserved on the 890 Ram Jump. That's all, folks. You stay safe out there, citizens, and I'll probably maybe see you in the verse.